Hi guys, it's Meredith. So today we're going to be talking about flight school scams and other unscrupulous business practices that you as the customer need to be on the lookout for. You know, as pilots, we're taught to see and avoid objects in the sky when we're flying. Birds, other airplanes. So you need to have just as sharp an eye as a consumer when you're shopping for a flight school. Number 10 on my list is flight instructors or flight schools that don't use a syllabus. This is honestly just a sign of complete laziness and disorganization. If you are a professional person, you have a job at a company, or maybe you run a small business, heck, even if you're a high school student and you go to class, even if you're homeschooled, there should be some sort of structure to what you were doing. How annoying is it when you as a student show up to a lesson and the instructor says, "Hey, what did you do last time?" Or "What do you want to do today?" Well, you're paying them a decent amount of money for them to come up with the plan of action. Now, sure, the customer, you as the student, should have input into this, but it's just not acceptable for a flight school or a flight instructor to not use a syllabus. So if you are trying to do flight training with someone who doesn't use a syllabus, ask them why they don't. Ask them if they have a syllabus available. You may even, propose one. You can find them online. You're welcome to download the syllabus off of our website. I'll put a link in the comments. But don't go to the airplane without a plan of action. It's a really good way to waste a whole lot of money and time. Number 9, instructors who don't provide any ground instruction beyond the bare minimum required for a certificate or rating. Again, this is just laziness, and it tells me that the instructor is really only interested in flight time. Now, if you are considering becoming a commercial pilot one day, maybe flying for an airline, cargo, charter, whatever, one of the most common and efficient ways to earn the 1,500 hours or so that you'll need to apply for that job is by being a flight instructor. But ground instruction doesn't count toward those 1,500 hours, only flight time does. So instructors who are only in it for the selfish reason of padding their logbook so that they can get their 1,500 hours and move on to that next job, that's not benefiting you in any way. You as the student, remember, you're the customer. You are going to need some quality instruction on the ground so that what you're doing in the airplane makes a lot more sense and you feel more confident on it. You need the ability to be able to sit down with your instructor, ask questions, and get good answers. A lot of this stuff can be done online these days, let's face it, but so many things that you need to learn as a student pilot in particular are what we like to call tribal knowledge. So what are operations like at your home airport? This is all required pre-solo training, by the way. It's in the regulations. Your instructor needs to sit down with you and help you figure out your local area. You can't just do all this from a book or by looking at ForeFlight or looking at the internet. You're going to need somebody who operates in the system in your local area to explain all this to you. And if when you show up for your flight lesson, all the instructor wants to do is just hop in the airplane and maybe yap at you a little bit while you're taxiing, that's really not professional. So look out for that red flag. Related to number 9, not doing ground instruction, is number 8, canceling lessons for various reasons and not offering the option of doing a ground lesson instead of a flight. Same MO here. All the instructor wants is flight time, and if they can't fly, they'd rather go to happy hour, hang out with their girlfriend, do something else other than educate you. Now, there are legitimately lots of times where you should not go fly. For example, there's a maintenance issue with the aircraft. The weather is horrible. There's plenty of reasons why flying on any given day might not be a good idea, but the instructor should offer to meet with you regardless, because again, going back to number 9, there's lots of things that you need to learn that he or she should be teaching you on the ground. So, and the other thing is, as the customer, when you've scheduled your flight lesson, even if you can't fly, you have blocked off a couple hours of your day to devote to your flight education. So if the instructor just cancels, you've basically rearranged your whole day for nothing. So again, this just shows a lack of professionalism and a lack of interest in you as the customer. So please be on the lookout for this. And if your instructor is routinely canceling flights for poor reasons, and canceling lessons just because you can't fly, I would strongly consider looking for another instructor or another flight school. Number 7, flight schools that actually hide the maintenance logs from students or won't let them view them, and just general shoddy maintenance practices, aircraft that are in visibly poor condition. You would not want to take your mom flying in this airplane because it looks like a piece of junk. This is a huge red flag. One of the things you will learn, hopefully during your flight training, is that you, as the pilot in command, are the one who determines whether or not the aircraft is in an airworthy condition. Now, if you don't own the aircraft, you're not responsible for getting the maintenance done, but if you're the pilot in command, let's say on your first solo flight, you are responsible for ensuring that the maintenance was done. And in addition to doing a thorough visual pre-flight inspection, you need to view the maintenance logs to make sure that the annual inspection was done, the 100-hour inspection was done. That's your responsibility as the pilot in command. And if a flight school won't let you talk to the mechanic if you have a question, won't show you the records, this means that they are hiding something. And this is very dangerous and potentially illegal. So, huge red flag here. Here's another one we see all the time. Number 6, the owners of the flight school are missing in action. Not available to speak with the customers, never around. You have no idea who these people are, what their background is. There might be some information on the website, but the customer has no contact with the owners of the flight school. Let me tell you something. If your flight school is so big that the owners literally don't have the time or don't make the time to get on the phone with you and answer a question or address a concern that you have, this should be a red flag. Now, I understand that when you're running a business, you have to have some boundaries for communication. In other words, I don't want a customer calling me about something routine, at midnight. I'd rather be asleep. But every single one of my customers has my personal cell phone number, same with Dana, and we tell them, look, if we're asleep, if we're out on a date, if we don't want to be disturbed, guess what? There's a function on my cell phone that can allow me to turn it off or set a do not disturb mode, and I will get back to you during normal business hours. But it's very important to me that my customers know that I'm the one responsible. Dana and I are the pilots in command of this business. And if anyone has a problem with anything that goes on here, I want to know about it immediately. So if you are operating at a flight school and you have a problem and the owners of the flight school, even the chief instructor, if the chief instructor is not available to sit down with you and address your concerns, huge red flag. Number 5, empty promises. So lots of flight schools on their websites, in their advertisements, will make promises of, let's say, an interview for a flight instructor position at the completion of their training. Or they may even go so far as to promise you an interview with an airline, or hint that you will definitely get an interview or even a job at the completion of the program. This is insane. No business, especially in these days, can promise anybody a job. There is just too much going on, too many variables. This is ridiculous for any school to make this kind of promise to a student just in the hopes of getting their money and securing a flight training contract. So if you are considering going to a flight school just because they are holding this carrot out in front of you that you'll get a job with them or with an airline one day, I want you to just really sit down for a moment and think, is that reasonable? I think if you look at it objectively, you realize that this is a marketing tactic, and it is not, it's really not something that the flight school should be doing. So, red flag. Number 4 on my list is the check ride guarantee. So you will see some flight schools post on their homepage, on their website, on their YouTube channel or whatever, that they guarantee you will pass your check ride on the first try. And if you don't, for whatever reason, they may offer you some incentive, like a reduced rate on deficiency training or whatever. But if you are going to a flight school because of a guarantee like this, again, I want you to think objectively about what this means. They're trying to tell you that they are a good flight school, that most of their students pass. I would much prefer that a flight school publish their actual pass rate versus some guarantee that you will pass on the first try. I would ask the owner of the flight school or the chief instructor, well, prove it. Can you show me the data on how your students have been doing? Can you give me some referrals to students who have passed on the first try? I would also ask for referrals to customers that maybe didn't pass on the first try and ask them, what problem did they have? Was it just test anxiety or were they not prepared? Now, if you look at the FAA data, and I've got it here, according to the FAA, in 2023, the pass rate for initial private pilot practical tests was 75%. So that means that 25% of all students that were going to a check ride for a private pilot certificate didn't pass. That's 1 in 4. And we don't have any information from the FAA on what the reasons were, how many hours that they had when they went for their check ride. All we know is the percentage of passes versus fails. So we always tell our customers, look, you have total control over whether or not you're going to pass your check ride on the first try, because we are not going to sign you off until we are absolutely certain that you have the ability to pass on the first try. But I can't control how you are going to behave during your check ride. You know, if you get anxious, if you have a brain fart, if you make a dumb mistake, well, you might fail. And honestly, you should. If I was the examiner, I would probably fail you too. We have never had a case where a student has failed a check ride and I have questioned the examiner's decision. I have always 100% agreed that, yep, if I were in your shoes, Mr. DPE, I would have done the same thing. And usually the student kicks themselves enough in the butt after the event and says, you know what, I screwed up, and they muster up the courage, they get themselves back in order, they pay the extra fee, and they pass on the second try. So I would be leery of a flight school that has a guarantee like this, because that tells me, again, they may be hiding something or trying to fudge their data a little bit. Number 3, and this is a biggie, the flight school requires or requests a large upfront deposit without any clear written policy on their website or given to the customer of what happens if the student either decides to leave voluntarily for whatever reason, won't be able to continue the program due to some life event or just dissatisfaction with the flight school, or worse, if they get kicked out of the flight school for whatever reason, which has happened before. I have been contacted by a number of customers of other flight schools that claim that the other flight school refuses to give them back their unused flight training funds in the order of thousands of dollars. And they're now left basically held hostage to this other flight school that they don't like. But if they can't get their money back, they're forced to basically burn off their deposit before they can start flight training with us. And of course now, you know, they've got a bad taste in their mouth with this other flight school. The relationship has been soiled. It's just not a good scene. So before you give any money to a flight school, I don't care how much or how little, you make sure that you have in writing somewhere what happens if I don't complete the program. Can I get my money back? The flight school should be willing to write you a check on the spot and send you on your way with a handshake and best wishes. If they don't, this is a huge red flag. So I feel so sorry for customers that have gotten in this situation, but I also kind of don't, because this is a buyer beware, smart consumer kind of thing. So before you give any money to anybody, make sure you know what's going to happen to your money, please. Number 2 on my list of flight school red flags is flight schools that advertise accelerated training programs. This could come in the form of, get your private pilot certificate in 14 days, or get your instrument rating in 10 days, or become an airline pilot in 12 months. It's all versions of the same thing. They're trying to suck you in with promises that they most likely can't keep. And again, here's where you have to be a smart consumer and realize that learning to fly, isn't, it's not like a whole lot of other things that you've ever done. It requires diligence, patience, determination, and you have to go into it recognizing that everybody learns at a different rate, and you are your own person, and there are lots of factors outside of your control that will affect the pace of your training, not the least of which is weather. A stationary front decides to park itself over your flight school for a week, you may not be flying. So your 14-day program just went out the window. Now, I've looked at the policies posted on some websites of flight schools that offer these 14-day or 28-day or 1 month or whatever quickie programs, and they always say that, we can't promise that you'll finish in 14 days. You may have to reschedule. And as long as they're open about it, that's fine. I just think that it's a little bit disingenuous to advertise these quickie programs because the reality is most people cannot get it done in that short amount of time. Some people do well with a drinking from the fire hose boot camp kind of environment. But let's just be real. If you were going into aviation because you truly enjoy it, because you love flying, because you want to make this your passion, you want to turn your interest into a career, don't you want to enjoy the ride? I'm not suggesting that you should drag it out indefinitely or that training aggressively, whatever that means to you, is not a good idea. No, I think if you have the means and the time and the bandwidth and the fortitude to go at your training aggressively, absolutely. But putting a self-imposed deadline on yourself, like I have to get it done in 2 weeks because that's the only time I can get off from work, it's just really not a good idea. I've also had students come to us not in an accelerated training program type scenario, but similar outcome, where they'll say, "Well, I've been approved to enroll in XYZ college, and they are requiring that I come in with a private pilot certificate." And so oftentimes what happens is the parent and the high school senior will show up in like January or February and with an offer letter from a college saying that, okay, you can start in August, but we need you to come in with your private pilot certificate in hand. Otherwise, you have to start from the very beginning with us, and all of the flight training you've done goes out the window. So can we do our flight training in an accelerated fashion because we have to have a private pilot certificate in hand by May, otherwise Johnny will lose all his credits and have to start at the beginning. And my response to that, to the parent, is, look, I'm very sorry to tell you this, but you waited 6 months minimum, too long to be sitting here telling me this. You need to back that out because the way that the check rides work these days is that you aren't even allowed to schedule your check ride until you've completed the training. But guess what? You're going to have to wait a month or more to take the actual test. So let's say that you went to some accelerated program out of state that offered for you to get it done in 14 days. And all the planets aligned, the weather was perfect, the maintenance was perfect, and the instructor manages to cram 40 hours in your logbook, including your solo time, in exactly 14 days. Woohoo. Well, the examiner in your area is now going to say, okay, Mr. Smith, that's great. Come back in 6 to 8 weeks for your check ride. So what are you going to do in that 6 to 8 week period? Are you going to sit around and twiddle your thumbs and letting your proficiency go in the trash? No, you're going to have to keep flying. So what was the point of the 14-day cram it down your throat training then? You might as well take your time, get it done right, keep flying in the gap between your sign-off and your check ride so that you can actually become a safe pilot. Because whether you intend to become a commercial pilot, fly for an airline one day, or just fly for yourself and with your family, isn't the whole point to really, really learn the art of safe flying and become a good pilot, not just become a pilot in a hurry. I've never understood that mentality. So the number one red flag to look out for when you're shopping for a flight instructor or a flight school is, do they offer package pricing based on the FAA minimums? This is related to a lot of the other items on this top 10 list, but this is the biggie. Look, if a flight school tells you, sure, you can become a private pilot for $99.95. All right, guys, we're not buying a TV or a refrigerator here. We're earning a private pilot certificate. The minimums aren't going to cut it. So read the fine print. Okay, that $99.95 or whatever it is going to get you how many hours of flight and ground instruction, and then what are the overages going to cost? At what rate are the overages going to be billed? And I can almost guarantee you there's going to be overages. How is that going to be handled? Do you have to pay everything up front, per my other item in this list? So I'm just encouraging you guys to be really savvy consumers. When you're shopping for a flight training program, approach it the same way you would if you were buying a car or a house or any other big life purchase. This is a big deal. You want to make sure that you are in control and you are spending your money wisely. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions about any of this or learning how to fly, please send me an email. I'll put a link to our website in the description so that you can send us an email through our website. And I hope you're enjoying your flight training. That's the main thing that I hope for you in 2025 in the new year, is that if you are studying to become a pilot, if you're practicing to become a pilot, if you are a flight instructor trying to build your hours so you can get that dream airline job of yours, just do your best, have fun, and always remember, you were in the customer's shoes at one point. You were that student. So if you're a flight instructor, just always try and put yourself in the customer's shoes, and I think that will make it easier for you to do the right thing. Take care.